Good morning, and welcome back to our study of Mark chapter 1. Today, we're going to be looking at verses 19 through 20. It says, "And going a little further, he saw James, the son of Zebedee, and John his brother, who were in their boat mending the nets. And immediately he called them, and they left their father Zebedee in the boat with the hired servants and followed him." Verses 19 and 20 continue the themes that we talked about yesterday from 16 through 18 and the idea of discipleship. The same thing that Jesus says to Andrew and Peter were most likely said to James and John as well. So the question could be asked, is there a reason why this particular story is included, other than just to let us know how these two men became followers of Jesus? Well, I think that there is. Considering what we said yesterday, how we have the example of Peter and Andrew willing to leave their livelihoods behind in order to follow Jesus. Here, you have the same thing, but there's an extra connection, and that's family. John and James were apparently part of a fairly well-known family. Part of the reason we say this is because we know later on in the story of Jesus, John is able to get into the courtyard of the high priest because his family is a friend of that family. So they're apparently fairly well connected. You also have to understand the importance of family in first century Judaism. As today, not only in Judaism, but also in other cultures as well, family is extremely important. Being connected, they are your support system. They are your people. They are the ones that you can rely on. You are supposed to uphold, the family in some way. And indeed, Scripture even talks about the idea of caring for family and being there for family as being important. However, here's the thing. Sometimes, especially in the first century, Jesus' disciples would be called to walk away from their families. And the reason for this is because families would be divided by the gospel. Jesus himself said at one point, "Do not think that I came to bring peace. I came to bring a sword that would divide sons and fathers, mothers and daughters, sons-in-laws and fathers-in-laws, and brothers and sisters." There's times where the gospel comes between family. We don't like to think about that today, especially in the South, because family is very important to us. But the gospel is greater than family. The call to be a disciple of Christ is more important than family. And it is unfortunate that there are some people who put family above their walk with Christ for whatever reason. Sometimes it's genuine out of love and care and respect for family. Sometimes it's out of selfish reasons. But at the end of the day, it's still not right. We make an idol of family, which is terrible considering the fact that family is a good thing. But in this instance, with John and James, and in other instances, they had to leave family behind in order to do the thing that God called them to do. Now again, most of us will never have to leave our families behind, to walk away from the business that their father had created or something along those lines. But it's the question of, would we be willing to go against our family to follow Jesus? I don't know that some of us would be willing to make that choice. But I hope that we would, because again, I think this is part of why this is here. John and James made the decision to walk away from their family, from their business, to join with Jesus and following him. They were willing to do that. And it's worth asking the question of whether we are as well. Now, the last thing I want to talk about today, though, is the concept that both yesterday's and today's stories deal with is the idea of discipleship. Discipleship, I would suggest, is one of the main things that Jesus came to do in his ministry. Yes, he proclaimed the gospel, and as we will see tomorrow, he also taught with authority. But he wasn't just talking into the air. The idea is that people would hear his teaching, would listen to it, and that would in turn become disciples themselves who could then turn around and share and teach themselves. Discipleship is incredibly important to Jesus, and it should be to us too, both as individuals, but also as the church. So, brothers and sisters, I just want to kind of close on these two thoughts today. In your own life, are you engaged in discipleship? First, on the level of, are you a disciple? Are you someone who is seeking to learn the ways of Christ? To get to know him better, to get to know God better, to shape your life to him? Are you engaged in that? And two, are you someone who is helping others continue along the path? Everybody is at a different place spiritually in their maturity. People who are more mature in the faith should be willing to try to help people who are not as mature. That's part of discipleship. Are you engaged in that? Are you engaged in being discipled, and are you discipling? And then the final thing is this. Are you part of a church that values discipleship? There are a lot of churches out there, it seems, over the last little bit, that are very concerned about getting people to make professions of faith. And while that's fine and good, that's not the end of the Christian walk. It is merely the beginning. The call to discipleship, to learn, to grow, and to then turn around and share what you have learned with others, that is what Jesus is doing here. That is why he is calling these men. Are you part of a church that makes that important? And if you are not, then I would suggest two things. One, see if you can get that going in your own church. See if you can begin a discipleship program in your church, because that is something the church should be engaged in. And if you can't, then brother, sister, maybe you should begin to look for a church that is doing that. Because again, we are the church of Jesus Christ. We should be doing the things that Christ himself did, and discipleship is one of them. I hope you have a good day.